Good evening and welcome, everyone. Hi. Oh, thank you for that generous smattering of applause. Welcome to After Dark here at the Exploratorium. I'm pleased that you found us tonight. We have had very moody weather outside, I feel, and glad that you all kind of decided to come out and experience what we have to offer here. My name is Sam. I'm the Program Director of Public Programs and part of the team that puts on these events week in and week out. And tonight's very special in a lot of ways. This is the final evening hours that our audiences can come and experience our summer exhibition, Adventures in AI. I'm curious, for how many of you have experienced our summer exhibition in Gallery 3, Adventures in AI? Wow, okay. Then let this be a plug for you. After this talk presentation, go check it out. Artificial intelligence is a big, complex topic that has so many strands to unravel and learn about. And this exhibition we approached in true Exploratorium style with curiosity and with questions and thinking about what it means to help everyone, ourselves included, understand and digest this very emergent technology. So there's a lot of fun to be had out there, some provocations, and many ways to learn about how you think AI can or should be used in our society. And this is very relevant to the talk that you're here to see tonight. For the past 2 years, we've hosted artist Catie Cuan as our artist in residence here at the Exploratorium. And I guess it's not the elephant in the room, but there's a giant hand behind me. That is the product of Catie's residency that had its debut over the last 3 months here during our Adventures in AI exhibition. This work was in development for over a year, but again, the residency was over 2 years. And this being kind of the closing night for the exhibition, we're so thrilled that Catie has come back to peek under the hood, as it were, and share a little bit more about this project, Manifold, this robot partly enabled by artificial intelligence that has a prompt to learn to be lovable. And so that raises all sorts of other questions about how we interact with machines, but I'll save that conversation for Catie. And what's great about it is because it's interactive and it kind of learned as it went, I truly think that the full expression of the project hasn't happened until after all the audiences have seen it on the floor. So tonight's your chance to see it here on stage in a different light. I encourage you to go check out the rest of the exhibition afterward. We're joined on stage by the project director of our artist in residence program, Ann Meisinger. We'll be in conversation with Catie, and we'll also get to hear from 2 of the engineers who helped work and bring this hand to life. So again, really grateful for this opportunity to peel behind the curtain and give you a chance to see the process behind this. I want to thank Ann and Catie and everybody who helped support the show tonight, including the AV team, and welcome and thank you once more. We will have a chance for audience questions at the end of the presentation, and I'll have the microphone, and we'll help signal when it's time to do that. So stay curious and keep those questions coming when the time is appropriate. And if you have not been to one of our After Darks before, I want to invite you to pick up one of the cards you may have found on your seats. We have one card that talks about the rest of the themes that we have for the next month, and another card talking about membership. So this is my very soft, awkward sell for, we really think you should become a member. A membership is quite affordable and allows you to come to every single After Dark for an entire year. So this show is closing, but coming up we have our winter exhibition Glow with illuminated artwork going to be populating Gallery 3, and lots of other inquiries to come now into the new year. So thank you to those of you who are firm supporters of us, and again, I'm glad that you're all, those of you new to us, are here to learn something new. So with that, please help me welcome to the stage our project director, Ann Meisinger, and artist, Catie Cuan.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ann Meisinger. Sam, thank you so much for that lovely and generous introduction. And it's just a real pleasure to be on stage with you tonight, Catie, at the conclusion of your Artist in Residence program here at the Exploratorium. I wanted to start out tonight by asking you, Why a hand? How did we get to this shape? What does this shape have to do with your practice and how you think about the concept of this project?
Thanks, Anne. Thank you, Sam. And wow, I'm so thrilled that y'all are here. We're going to have a very fun evening. At some point, we're going to wander off the stage. The robot is going to have her solo. We will open it up and show you a lot of what's happening on the inside with Parker and Edwin, and then obviously open this up to be a real dialogue. I also just want to invite all the folks. There's a number of seats down here in the front if people just want to have a place to park yourself instead of standing in the back. So why did we settle on a hand? I'm so emotional because this project has been 2 years and just a tremendous amount of work, and it literally hit me in this very moment that like this instantiation of it is coming to an end. And that is like, I'm very deeply grateful and somewhat sad and very proud actually of what we accomplished. So I'm gonna try not to cry tonight. We'll see. Why did we make a hand? So I grew up in Berkeley. I'm a hardcore Bay Area person. I've been coming to the Exploratorium since I was 5 years old, back when it was at the Palace of Fine Arts, because I'm a millennial. And I never knew that there was an artist in residence program. And by some hearty twist of fate, I had the immense privilege of getting to be an artist in residence here, which I cannot describe to you how truly profound and extraordinary of an experience that is, because the Exploratorium, as we all know, is a singular institution. If you are 6 months, 60, or ideally 120 years old, you are invited to come here and play. And so the notion that you could just unfold a project over the course of 2 years without a specific end goal was deeply scary and super invigorating. And so when I started as an artist in residence here, I had gone through a number of personal changes in a hugely dense period of time, which I'll just tell you. I finished my PhD. We all got fired from our jobs, which would have been my post job. I found out I had a pretty significant health problem, and then I broke up with my fiance, who I had been with for 10 years. And all of those things happened literally in 4 weeks. And then it was like, here's your artist in residency program at the Exploratorium. And I was like, you have no idea who you've signed up for this journey. And so the questions that came to mind for me, because I was thinking that I had been held by all of these different institutions and affiliations, and they all just disappeared literally overnight. And so the questions that popped up for me as I was investigating this project were like, what does it mean to be cared for? And how does it feel to be held? That's not really the question that you think of when you think about robots, for the most part. I mean, I don't know who's low key. We're cool with everybody. But I think like those are the two questions that were really top of mind for me. And I was like, how can I facilitate an experience for people of welcoming, holding, and care that is mitigated or provided by artificial intelligence and robots. And so Edwin and I started playing in my imagination with all these visions. So I was like, let's make a giant mattress, and when you fall into it, it has all this different sets of valves, and it pushes you back up onto your feet. So this very literal interpretation of caring for you. And then I had another idea, which was like, let's make a giant inflatable, somewhat humanoid robot that expands when it receives positive affect and contracts when it doesn't, which for all my Martha Graham girlies or everybody in the room, that was like very dancerly meaningful for me. So Edwin and I played a lot with air. We did a bunch of experimentation with balloons and random stuff outside. Air is very fickle. Hard as a medium and loud. And so Edwin started playing instead with kind of cables, like how can we create more naturalistic motion that's driven through tendons? And then I literally woke up in the middle of the night and was like, we're making a giant hand. The reason we're making a giant hand is because some of the first artwork that's ever been done by our species in caves like 10,000, 13,000 years ago is putting your hand on the wall and saying, I exist. So it's putting that powder around your hands. We've all seen them. Putting your hand on the wall and saying, I exist, I am a human. And what that meant for me is that what we wound up making, it does not have a sex, it doesn't have an age, it doesn't have a race. It's just a universal symbol of our species and a demonstration that we exist and we are social. We care for each other. The thing that makes us unique as a species, well, one of them, is that we can coordinate in these very large groups because we're not particularly skilled at a lot of things that help you survive in the real world, right? We can't hold our breath for very long underwater. We don't know how to fly. I have not tried to attack another animal with my teeth, but like chances are you can't do that. We're not particularly fast. It's like all of these things that create these real physical limitations for us. But one of the things that allow us to unlock this tremendous, depending on how you argue, impact on the universe is our ability to coordinate together. And so I thought a hand and the kind of opposable thumb, again, as being one of our evolutionary adaptations, would just be this like symbolic representation of our species. And it's also one of the ways that you demonstrate care. So you show touch, you touch another person. You also hug yourself, if, for example, if you're feeling scared. And for me, it's like one of the primary ways that I manipulate my environment, right? And so it just like all made sense. And Edwin had also been building these really incredible things with tendons. And I remember I looked at Edwin and I was like, I think we're making, and then like before I even finished the word, I was like, a giant and Edwin was like, hand. I also think we're making a hand. And then obviously I'll pause for a moment, but I'll talk at great length about how we then developed it to look like this and how to move the way that it does. And I also, just before I'm done with this particular diatribe, what you are looking at represents just an incredible amount of team effort to this point about social coordination. And a couple of those folks are here tonight, Edwin especially, who's an exhibit developer at the Exploratorium, Parker, who was an incredible engineer that contributed to this project, Goose, who's also here and sculpted the foam. Obviously, Anne was a huge advisor in this. Michelle, Ethan, Jade also did some early ideation. So we just have like this. And then all of the dancers who performed in the piece that we did with this robot back in May, my mother, and Erica Tanoff, who donated all of the fabric, and Erica's daughter, who then helped us hot glue literally every piece of silk that you're looking at on this stage. Kaya, who sewed the glove. So it's just, Michelle also did the music. It's like just, there's no universe in which this would have happened as a single person organism.
Oh my goodness, Catie. Yeah, it's a pretty incredible thing that you've made. This is the first robot that you've made, right? So your practice up until this point has really been about engaging with robots that are purpose-made for something else, and then you bring them into your practice and use them in different ways, in creative ways. I'm so curious, you know, having watched this project from the Wavy Man, the inflatable gas station Wavy Man, you know what I'm talking about? We brought one of those in the galleries to test it out. So from watching, you know, from there to this concept that involves that tendon actuation and visitor engagement and utilizes artificial intelligence to do what it does, I'm curious about if there's something that you wanted it to do that didn't manifest, something that you have in your mind that you really want to push further in your next project.
I think I'm honestly just purely out of curiosity, has anybody ever been to a show that I've done or been in? Oh my God, wow. Only a couple people in the room. Okay, so I have performed with 15 or 16 different kinds of robots all around the world. And because I am a part of that performance, I always wind up being a mediator for the experience. So like me as a performer and a person who's moving on stage winds up being a part of what the audience internalizes. And this project was very different because if you've seen this out on the floor, or when you do at some point in the next few days, it's just in the gallery by itself. And that represented for me like totally a lack of control, a little bit of a disembodiment of like, wow, I'm not exactly sure what's going to unfold here. And to be frank, I mean, there was so much work that went into this project, and it opened at 6 p.m. at an after dark, and Ethan was literally coding at 5:57 p.m. And I just looked at him and was like, Ethan, it's 5:57 p.m. And he was like, uh-huh. And that was like what happened. So we were like all the way up until the very end of getting this project out on the floor, making permutations and changes. And that does not happen usually when I'm performing with a robot, because otherwise that would be really dangerous and unsafe. And there's a chance that depending on what kind of thing I could be performing with, it could really hurt me. So in this case, we were making a lot of changes all the way up until, and like our deadline really was at the end. I think what happened was there was a moment when it started to move around in the pen by itself, and we all looked at each other and were like, it works. Like, oh my gosh. And for folks who have experience working with robots or just any like very complex emergent system, there's a very high probability that nothing will happen, and you will have poured thousands of hours of your life into a non-entity. And you just burn it. You're like lighting it on fire, and you're like, okay, that's great. And so there was like a very high chance that we were going to get all the way up until that point, and nothing would materialize. So I think when it did start to move around and work, and I was like observing it actually for the first time, and it was doing a lot more than I thought I had planned for it to do, and in some ways doing a little bit less. Like, you know, we'll show you when we show you all the behaviors. Like, there were a few behaviors in there that we didn't get to that I would have loved to do. There are a couple things about the shaping and the kind of overall sensation that you get when you're looking at the robot that I might have modified. But for a next instantiation of this, I really want to make two so they can. And I would really like to make some that are twice the size. And I think the scale and the awe that you experience, it's in conversation with large statues and totems that might have some religious affect to them, but it is also about feeling the motion that happens at that scale. You know, I was a dancer for a long time, and so much of my expertise is about creating motion that's effectual, and really like can convey sentiment through motion and context and meaning. And I think just doing it at that scale changes the relationship.
One of my favorite things about watching this robot on the floor is watching people walk up to it and raise their hand in the air, and in a way that is like, I have a hand. This is also a hand. And then in the moments when the fingers are working as they've been designed to work, you'll see very shortly that they don't always move in a way that you expect them to. They move counter to the way that a human's hand works. And you see people really realize, oh, that's not a human hand. You know, it is me, but it's not me. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the tension between learning to be lovable and also including this behavior in it that is very counter to kind of the humanness of the hand.
I didn't want to give anybody the satisfaction of monkey see, monkey do. So I didn't want anyone to wander up to this robot and go like bloop, and then it went bloop, and then you were kind of like, okay, got it. Like, I did not want to have that experience, or in many cases, especially if you're 8 years old, running up to it and like doing the you know what, and then like seeing if it'll do it too, and then kind of looking to see if all your friends watched you do it. And I didn't want to give people that experience, because that's not the experience that you have with a new entity. It's what happens is you are investigating each other. You're curious. You want to know what it's noticing about you, and you want it to notice you. I mean, I was really blown away at how often people were like, look at me, look at me. And we thought that so much of it would be the opposite, is that we kind of would need to make the robot engaging so that people would want to engage with it. But when it's novel and you know that there's something perceptual happening, most people are actually demanding the attention of the entity. And that's a dynamic that I never could have predicted. You know, the lovability piece came in for a few reasons. A couple of those initial artistic questions that I mentioned. So what does it mean to be cared for? How does it feel to be held? I think it sort of materialized out of that, and also based on my own experience, like the way that I learned how to be lovable, and Edwin and I have maybe empathized with each other on this, was that if I was very high performing, I was deserving of more love. That's like the story that I started to tell myself when I was very young. And we don't have to unpack all those things right now, but like that was what came. And so I was like, what would it, children go through this process of like, they learn what keeps them safe in the world, what makes their parents continue to care for them. And we're going to have agents at some point that are also trying to learn on some level how to survive or how to maintain their relationship with another human or another agent. Like Alison Gopnik writes about grandma robots and how we're going to have grandma robots and parent robots and baby robots, and we'll have these like relationships that also unfold with autonomous machines. And so that was part of the lovability piece. But functionally, the way that it accomplishes this is we have a series of behaviors that that provoke and move around on the robot, and then it observes what's happening in the environment and says, oh, this was a good behavior, a bad behavior. It learns a score, and then it regresses to the ones that are high scoring, and then we reset that periodically. And you'll see there are a couple of these behaviors that really freak people out, and then some that people tend to enjoy. And then just one more piece on this sort of observing and also replicating and kind of asking questions. I've gotten a lot of different words people throw at me of their perceptions about this project. Something is like welcoming or happy or interesting or curious, and then things like weird and strange. And my invitation has always been that we associate so many negative things around our future with robots. We tend to tell two very hyperbolic, polar stories. One, which is that we're going to be more successful than ever. We'll never have to work again. We'll all live until we're 150 with our robot surgeons and our automatic composting and our very clean homes. Or we're all going to die. And those are like the two stories, right? And there's just nothing in the middle. And so for me as an artist, I'm like, wow, that's super boring. And also, we have the power to build the future we want. So why is there this like sitting back and receiving of some undesirable outcome? Like, where is the agency in that conversation? And so if I can have a large, soft, covered in silk couture robot that the whole goal of it is simply to like engage and interact and provoke your imagination and try to learn things that are in service of a positive human outcome, that for me is just as valid of a pursuit as building a robot that exclusively engages in a functional task.
I love your description of the two polar extremes that we encounter in popular culture. And I want to make sure that you all get to see how this robot moves and what's underneath. But before I sign off on this part of the conversation, I want to ask you, Catie, what does that middle look like? If you can open your crystal ball, or also I know you're deeply invested in this personally, like what is the future with robots that you are working to create?
I think that, as I mentioned, part of our species is this deep interest in coordination. There are other few things that we tend to have in common, and I say we over literally extraordinarily long horizons. The number of humans that have lived and died in the history of our species is 100 billion people. That's really not that big of a number. Like the GPU that's out there that I just looked inside of that Edwin showed performs 300 trillion calculations per second. Did I get that right? So we are literally like, every single person in this room is 1 in 100 billion people. That blows my mind. I'm like, I think we have 100 billion microbes on my shoe. Like, this is crazy. And so if I look at that, the thing that I think about the most in terms of our future with robots, aside from like, I can list a lot of great applications, is just like people feeling a deep sense of agency. I get to talk to so many amazing folks, like school children, people of all ages from all very many backgrounds, and I'm like, the future for me that's with AI and robots is one in which you feel empowered. And that could be that your interest is in fashion or soccer, or you really love, chemical distillation of certain kinds of compounds. I don't know. Like, as long as you feel that there is a world in which you are empowered, like, that's the future that I care about with AI and robots. Like, hell yeah, do I want robots cleaning up trash out of rivers automatically by like detecting cans and getting plastic out of the oceans? For sure. Do I think we can more efficiently clean solar panels? Heck yeah. Do I think we can do safer surgeries if we have robots who have a shared autonomy with a surgeon and it's also partially laparoscopic? And can I have a robot inside of my home that helps me unlock access to intelligence so I don't need to be staring at my laptop and my cell phone all the time? Yes, I want all of those things. But the biggest part of that future is one in which we do not give up this sense of agency, where we're not saying, oh, like, look, y'all, I literally was a professional dancer. I did not have an undergraduate degree in engineering. And I was like, I'm going to go get a PhD. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, right? I'm just saying like there's so much in the social fabric and narrative right now, which is like this thing is happening to us and it's scary and I don't like it on many different levels, depending on how you squint. Whether that's like a lack of desire for increase or in density or fast moving technologies, whether that's AI, biotechnology, whether you're averse to capitalism or like, I don't know. It's just I think we need to take back this idea that like we are extraordinary beings capable of so deeply much that is everything from like empathy to traveling to Mars. And having that sense of agency is the thing I really care about.
Okay, Catie, it's time to see the robot move. In case I don't get to, thank you. It's been an honor.
Thanks, Ed.
All right.
Let's get Parker and Edwin.
Come on up, Parker and Edwin.
Okay, so I'm not even joking. We did not rehearse this, but we know what we are doing, and it's all going to happen. Okay, so we'll talk even more about this when we open the robot up. But basically, this robot has 16 motors in it. So it's got 4 motors, 1 on each wheel, and then there's 3 in each finger. So it's very much like your hand, right? You have 3 degrees of freedom in your fingers, and I mean, we don't have wheels on our wrists, but you move your wrists around. So the base was based after a Stanford robot called the TidyBot, which is something that's happened at Stanford for the last couple decades, honestly. Maybe not quite that long, like 10 years. And so Parker made a very beefed up version of the TidyBot base. Can you just spin it around a little bit? Okay, and Parker is gonna drive it around forward and back. And so we have this mobile base. And Parker, anything you want to say about the kind of the wheels? And it has a car battery in it. 2 car batteries in it, so that it can run it's not plugged in currently, and when you see it in the museum, it's also not plugged in. Anything else we should say about the base?
Point out how holonomic it is, so it can go all directions without rotating.
Yes, so it's holonomic, which means it can go all directions without rotating. So it can go like this. So your car is non-holonomic, which means that it's sort of constrained in the way that it can move. But ours, we can drive around in many directions. And it also, I think it will still do this. Actually, no, not when Parker's joysticking it. So we have a setting when it's out in the museum where if a person were to come up and push it, basically it would stop because it detects a change in the current, and so the wheels it's not going to knock you over. Okay, should we move some fingers?
Sure.
Cool.
So you can keep spinning.
Uh-oh. So I feel honestly like a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. you know when they're like, and now we're going to like have it leap out of the water. Oh yeah, keep spinning it, Parker, and then maybe send them back, Edwin. Or I don't know what you're. Okay, so this is both a left and a right hand because the fingers can go all the way forward and all the way back. The thumb itself is passive, so it doesn't have a motor in it. It doesn't move. And then Edwin is going to show you. So those are some behaviors that you've probably done yourself before, like open and close your fingers. And then we'll see a few more. Let's do a weird one, Edwin says. So when we call it a behavior, it's really like a sequence of motions. And the behaviors, these are what we're scoring. So this is what the robot is learning. It has a camera on the front and the back. Oh, it's gonna, okay. Um, so it's got a camera on the front and on the back.
Yeah, so normally this lives inside of a railing. We originally really wanted it to be free roaming, but we ran into several challenges with that. One of them being we didn't want it to just like come up behind someone unexpectedly and frighten them while they're working, like playing at an exhibit. The other is like the actual technical safety considerations, what kind of hardware we need, and the programming to make sure that it knows where it is and how to avoid people.
Turn the sound on. Turn the sound. Oh, also, we're going to add one more element here. So I'm so glad that Edwin brought up. So we were originally going to just have this wiggle around the floor of the whole Exploratorium, but what it does now is it actually automatically localizes according to these April tags that are around the pen. So it knows where it is at all times. And we can also...
I turned the speaker off and I forgot to turn it back on.
oh, well, when we open it up, then we can...
We'll
Okay, so the robot also plays music according to its motion. That's a recurring theme in my work. So Parker and I worked at Everyday Robots together, and one of the things I did there was we had the robot play music every time it moved. So each joint was mapped to a different sound. And we have replicated that behavior with this robot, and Michelle did all of the music for it. But Edwin turned the speaker off. So when we open the robot app, we'll run that again.
So in addition to these finger movements, while it's inside its railing, it also has autonomous base movements. So for example, it can just roam around the base freely, but it can also track people. So if on either side of its camera, if it sees people standing there, sometimes it'll follow them around within the railing, and sometimes it'll kind of like back away and move towards people. So yeah, that in combination with moving the fingers at the same time is such like a unique like feeling.
No, yeah, so this usually happens autonomously, but Parker is doing this over here with the joystick. And can you like really whip it? Okay. Yeah. No, just spinning.
Oh yeah.
So we did a performance with this robot back in May at Stanford Live. So we had 6 dancers perform with it on stage. And in that case, it was performing a scripted sequence of motions. But the dancers had to get used to really quickly that experience of dancing around on a stage and having this giant thing come dance with you. Cool. Should we open it up? Okay,
Move to
we're
the-
gonna. This is a special experience because this does not ever happen in front of the museum audience. But you all are gonna see what the inside of this robot looks like. Any hypotheses about what's happening in there? Besides a lot of things. Besides a small person pulling on. No, there's Parker's twin is not in here. But yeah.
We'll just ask you to turn around so the person can get out.
Yeah.
Ruffle in the curtains at all.
Yeah. You know, we rotate people out, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have different shifts. Oh, you can take it off. Or I'll give you this.
Okay.
Yes. So
Why is she giving?
this massive glove.
She's talking and then just taking it.
I will just repeat what
Thanks,
she
yeah.
said. The tailor who worked on this project, Kaya Basket, sewed this massive glove in pieces, and she tailored the glove to the palm and finger shapes that were made by Goose, who is here in the audience.
Goose. Shout out to Goose.
Right there.
All of this is styrofoam, just coated in something that feels like a truck bed liner almost. It's this really durable thing. It's sculpted, sort of accentuated, because once you put the glove on, you lose some of the detail. So we made it pop, at least at this big, with these big foam sections. You got a third hand, or you think you're good? Very good. Really, really gently and easily comes off. Coming up behind you, go. And so, yeah, with this top part out of the way, this is the... You could take like 2 fingers off. You want to do that, or no? I think it all comes off, doesn't it, or is it just 2 fingers? Yeah. Okay.
So this is a camera. We have one on the front and one on the back, and they are stereo cameras, which means we get RGB and depth. Is that, yes. And so we have these 2 cameras, one on the front and one on the back, and it's what allows the robot to perceive what's happening inside of the environment. And we use a whole bunch of tools that, if you've ever made a robot or know much about it, like Foxglove, which helps us visualize what's happening for the robot. We use ROS, which is Robot Operating System, and a bunch of controllers and some off-the-shelf perception libraries. And so this is what allows us to program and build this. We have an NVIDIA Jetson Orin Nano in here, which is a computer, basically. It's an NVIDIA GPU. And then a bunch, these are all of the spools that are connected to motors, which are behind there as well. And then Edwin designed this whole cable actuation and tendon system. So this is what creates more tension in the fingers, is where all of those springs are. These are the spools that pulls each of those motors to create the finger motion. And then those are our 2 giant car batteries in the bottom. Parker did most of this wiring down here. It's pretty crazy. If people want to maybe see afterwards or something, we can see if that's a good idea or not. Yeah. Oh, sure. We're going to fold the fingers. Okay. So
We can see the movement of all those spools and cables as I fold them, and then we'll take the finger.
great. So we had to put limits on all of these different joints, basically as to how far they could bend, because we didn't want the robot to contact itself, so we didn't want the end of these fingers basically to smack into the palm. And also we found that sometimes we just were demanding like an incredible amount of torque for these base joints, because you had to like yank the finger all the way back up. So this is as far as especially the base joints can go. And then this is what it looks like underneath. This is some of Goose's foam sculpting. And then Edwin has these rolling contact joints, basically, that are 3D printed, which create each of the joints themselves. Are you going to move it again, Edwin?
I'm going to bring it back up.
Bring it back up. Okay.
Catie, do you want to talk a little bit about what the fingers are coated in and the friction?
Oh, yeah. So this is all hand-sculpted foam. Goose sculpted all of this. We had a lot of okay, so this glove is made out of stretch canvas, and so the inside of the foam has to pull against that glove when the fingers bend. And initially, it was a pretty high-friction foam, and so they were getting stuck. So we covered them in pantyhose. Like literally tights that you buy at a drugstore, so that these would become more and more smooth, and then over time, turned it into an actual material. But this kind of like physical soft robotics stuff was very non-trivial in this project. Yeah. Do you want to talk more about the inside?
Sure, yeah. And actually, we could also, with the front off, I don't know if it's any easier to see here's a souvenir for someone. See the mechanism of the drive wheels. Each of these wheels can steer 360 degrees, infinite amount of times. It doesn't have a limit. And there's a gear and an axle going down the center that then sends power through that wheel. So each wheel has the backside, yeah. Each wheel has 2 motors. So 4 wheels, 8 motors. 4 of them are steering, and then 4 of them are drive. So this robot, I couldn't really do it justice, and I was really paranoid about driving it off the stage. So I didn't want to go too crazy. But in the exhibit, we had some really great motions where the thing can both rotate and also drive, and it's pretty slick. So maybe you can see it a little bit better, but there's cooling fans on the backside of our motor rack because we, especially the friction and the weight of the glove, which we probably underestimated a little bit, turned out that we needed to add some cooling so the motors could stay there. Despite operating in a barrier, we did try to take safety pretty seriously. That was a challenge. Anne's over here with a big red button. That's our safety stop. There's that safety stop will through a fairly independent circuit, even if the robot software crashes, and it may. We wrote it ourselves. The safety circuit will just pull power from the motors, which will de-energize it. It'll coast a little bit and then stop. We discussed what it would take to have this just freely roam the exhibit floor. It's possible, but it's a really tricky technical challenge that we decided just putting it inside a pen was the best move. So, I don't know if you have anything else.
Are you ready to take some questions from the audience?
I think so, yeah.
Fantastic. I think there are a lot of questions. Give us a second to get settled, and we'll bring a mic around to you.
Do you want to push the robot back a little bit?
Mine's just a very simple one. Can we turn on the audio? I would
Oh,
love
the
to hear
audio.
it.
Oh, right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for reminding
Thank
us.
you for reminding us.
Yeah, sure. I'll just go back to. Install.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much for the question. While we were doing that, anybody else? Yes, we have some folks, I think.
This is sort of a question about questions, but how early on did people ask you if it would be able to sign?
That's such a great question. I would say like basically as soon as we decided we were making a hand. We did not experiment with that, I have to say. So I think for me, it's not something that I know how to do, and I think it was certainly like a project that kind of emerged from a lot of personal exploration. And so, but I think that would be like a really beautiful instantiation of this. Especially, one thing that we don't have is that our thumb right now is passive, so we're not able to do as much. And then the second thing is that we just like can't change the orientation, really quickly. So that's some of the limitations. But I love that question. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, you mentioned that it was in a dance performance, and I know that you guys said that there was safety features where if it detected like a current change, it would stop. But you also mentioned that like while he was controlling it, that it would probably not do that. And I wanted to know if it also would not do that if it was programmed to do like a preset dance routine, and if the like what you had to do to prepare the dancers to make sure that it was like not interacting with them in a less than desirable way.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I should clarify, when it's controlled by a joystick, we basically have this low-level controller running that only listens to the joystick. When we created these actions for the actual scripted dance routine, that's when all of our safety layers engage, so that if it detects a push in the opposite direction, it'll stop. So it was very safe for the dancers. That being said, we also, and this is honestly a skill that I've built over quite a long time working with robots, and specifically in performances, we built a whole protocol as a team for how we were going to handle safety situations. So we always had somebody standing next to the safety stop during the course of the performance. The dancers, learned this whole piece and always knew where the robot was going to be at all times. And then we also put a lot of limits on how quickly it moved during the course of the shows, so that even if it were to bonk into you at full speed. And that's why we have foam as well that covers the whole thing, as opposed to it being like a very stiff robot. that being said, I've certainly worked with a lot of robots in the past that were really dangerous, and you have to put a lot of safety protocols in place to make sure that everyone's going to be fine.
I was wondering if we'd have a chance to see what the robot looked like at the exhibition, like any videos of it interacting with people or things like that.
We have a video up on the website with a bunch of people hanging out with the robot. It's just literally 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So if you go to the Exploratorium website and to the Artist in Residence program, you can see a video right there that shows the robot in action. And we will put this back on the floor at the when we're done with it here, and it'll be up in this museum in situ until the end of Sunday.
Hi, sorry, I know you keep calling it a robot and it's specifically a hand, but I wanted to know if you ever wanted to put a name to it or personify it at all.
The name of the project is Manifold, which is to bring together many parts, Manny like manipulation, Manny like manicure. And so it has a multi-layered meaning. Jokingly, behind the scenes, we like to call it Pamela Henderson. That is not going on the museum floor, for your ears only. But yeah, Pamela, Handrew, Pamela Henderson. We've played a lot.
Manu.
Yeah. Manu. All of our dancers named it Manu. Yes. Yeah.
When fully put together, like all the foam and thumb and everything on it, how much does it weigh?
That's a great question.
I can't remember. I think we talked about how much the Tidybot weighed and then added about 100 pounds. But we had to figure that out to take it into a truck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heavy is the answer. But I think it's something in the hundreds of pounds. I mean, it's definitely not a ton. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned a name earlier of somebody who wrote something about the grandma robot, child robot. I'd love to have that name again. And then do you have any other authors or anything that you recommend for kind of the topics around humans interacting with non-human intelligent entities or anything like that?
Oh, love that question. So the woman I mentioned is Allison Gopnik. She is, I believe, in the psychology department at the University of California, Berkeley. So she did quite a lot of early work with DeepMind about how to get AI to learn the way that children do, which is through very little information and being able to generalize very broadly. So she was like a consulting academic, I think, on that project with a bunch of like Pierre Sermonet and people who'd been at Google Brain for a long time. Ruha Benjamin, I think, is a really prolific author in this space who specifically looks at kind of race and technology. Our dear colleague Michelle Alam is a faculty affiliate at the Stanford HAI, Human-Centered AI Institute. She's also one of the department chairs in modern thought and literature at Stanford. Her AI and society class was here today. I don't know if anyone's still here, but she's written some really amazing articles on kind of AI and literature specifically. The space that I'm in, which I would broadly refer to in this context is like AI, robots, and creativity, includes a whole coterie of folks, everyone from like Sydney Skybetter and Ken Goldberg and Madeline Gannon, all the way to like Margot Apostolos and Osama Khatib, who like made some of the earliest robot dances in the 1990s. I will also say that like Ted Chiang, the science fiction writer, has been pretty impactful for me. Like some of these kind of non-polar, just that there's like a lot of subtlety in the way that we think about these things, can come from anywhere. So not just folks who work in the field. Yeah.
I would like to take this opportunity to throw out my favorite quote I've learned since I started working with Catie by Sydney Skybetter, who she just mentioned. Sydney was sort of the wordsmith for the performance at Stanford, and he said this thing that was so impactful for me, which was that anytime we have a robot like this that functions as it should is an absolute miracle. Like, you just don't get to have this all the time perfectly. So I'm sorry you can't hear it sing, but come by this weekend.
It will sing for you. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, we have this question right here.
Can you talk a little bit about the emergent autonomous stuff that it would do? What sort of systems did you have? Could folks here? I'm asking about the autonomous emergent stuff that you guys did. Just talk about that.
So I use the word emergent to describe anything that's like super complex. So in our case, I mentioned we have a bunch of motors, batteries on it. We have the cameras on the front and the back. We have the speaker. We have the computers. There's just like so many different components. And then we have the overall like look and feel and the sensation that you get. So the autonomy really comes from those behaviors that I mentioned. So there's a base controller, which is separate than the finger controller. The finger controller is cycling through these different behaviors, assigning them a score according to all of your reactions, and then regressing to the ones that are high scoring, and then it gets updated to be back to 0, basically, periodically. But then the base controller is doing a combination of sort of human following and then a little bit of random roaming. And all of that is dictated, again, by the camera on the front and the back, and all of those April tags that help it localize inside of the space. Yeah.
So it's triggering off of people's facial reactions?
Yeah. And also the density of where they are. So we have a few people over here, but nobody over there. Yeah.
So my question is, from a software perspective, how did you get it to judge affect and response? Like, how did you approach figuring that out? And also, how accurate is it? How much of the time does it get it right? And what does it do if it just misses like a response? Does it have any behavior to fill that time or anything like that?
Yeah, great question. So Michelle is the person who did quite a lot of this stuff under the hood, and I will do my best to parrot her, and then Parker or Edwin might also have some insight here. So as it starts to perform a behavior, it will always complete that behavior regardless of the interaction that it perceives over the course of that behavior. It's just at the end of having played that behavior, it assigns a score. So no matter what, it won't interrupt itself. We use like a pretty off-the-shelf open source facial detection algorithm, and then we also used an off-the-source kind of facial affect measurement. And both of those things, we just throw the data away. Like, we don't touch any of what anyone did. We don't record those images. We don't save them. And it's messy. It's like a very messy, imperfect swipe of a paintbrush as to what that could be. I think if we were doing this project in a way that was, we actually still refer to this as a prototype. If we were doing this project in a kind of 2.0 instantiation of that, I think we would train all of those models, or we would just like set the weights more deterministically and have just more of a hand, a curatorial hand inside of that. But in this particular instantiation, we used a lot of models that were off of the shelf. We didn't record images. We didn't really make a ton of updates over time. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Yeah. Two choices of microphone.
Thanks,
yeah.
I think that one thing that I noticed observing the system was that with the off-the-shelf, which by off-the-shelf we mean sort of research models, academic institutions that develop and publish these, that it was relatively easy to rig these together and develop a robot that learns to be loved. But figuring out what the robot's understanding of love was difficult. And what the robot thought as reaction and love and started to zone on wasn't necessarily our intuitive human understanding of what it was. So it would behave and would zone in on things and behaviors and patterns that we weren't really expecting, but what the robot, based on what we told it to do and programmed it to do, was doing well.
Yeah, we also played with the idea of taking information that like things that people were saying. So we played with the idea of putting a microphone on the robot and also being able to include that, and then including a couple of other hand-tuned features, like the amount of time that people were spending before they left, or how much they moved. You know, we we made a judgment, which was like, if they're standing there and they're still, they must really love it. But we actually threw out a couple of those things because we just thought it would take a little bit longer to get them really right. But yeah, it was entirely subjective and totally up for change in the future.
Hi. I was just wondering, was this your first? You said you have a lot of experience working with robots, but was this your first time sort of building one, or have you done that before? And if it was, what were some of the challenges in translating more of your like artistic thoughts into like the actual functions?
I made a robot. How many robots have I made? So in grad school, we had to make quite a few. So I made a soft robot that would go into the ground and tell whether or not there was a California salamander inside of it. It was like an extensible, soft robot. I also made something that like automatically detected where it was in space and threw balls, or like those kinds of assignments, things that you have to build in the course of grad school. This is in my artistic practice, the first robot that I've made as an artist. We are now making another robot. Stay tuned, it's very underwrapped. I think the thing that some of the friction points, it's like you're always coming up against limitations. Everything takes forever, everything is way harder. So I can make a dance for a bunch of human beings in like 4 minutes to 3 hours. Getting a robot to do that just takes an inordinate amount, like multiple amount of time more to be able to do those things. So I think one of the biggest problems was just like dealing with constraints specifically around time. So if, in our case, we really made this in like 4 or 5 months over the course of like weekends and evenings and a few days when people were able to be at the Exploratorium full time. And that was just tremendously hard. And you can't test and change everything as much as you want because you basically have 1 or 2 shots at it. So with more infinite time and resources, I think it could have manifested differently. But yeah, that's just one of the major friction points.
I think we're going to close with that really excellent question. We're going to hang out for a little while, so feel free to come chat with us and chat with Manifold. I want to thank Parker for being here tonight. I want to thank Edwin for coming back from vacation this morning to do this program, and Sam and the whole team here at the Exploratorium, and especially Catie. Catie, thank you so much. It's been a great year.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.